Jake Miller never thought a walk through a market on a distant alien moon would change his life forever. He was just a cargo pilot, looking to sell a few Earth-made items and maybe grab a drink before heading back to his rusty ship. The market was noisy, colorful, and filled with strange alien smells and creatures of all shapes. He had just taken a bite of a roasted worm stick, crunchy but oddly sweet, when everything went silent. The crowd parted suddenly, and Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. Tall shadows moved toward him. 6 alien women with long limbs, dark, red armor and glowing eyes. Before he could react, one of them stepped forward and grabbed him under his arms like he weighed nothing. With a smooth motion, she lifted him into the air, as if he were a stuffed toy. "Hey, what the hell, put me down," Jake shouted, kicking his legs. The aliens didn't answer, only exchanged looks and nodded. They spoke in a language he didn't understand, soft, smooth, but serious. One of them, who seemed older, said something that made the others move quickly. Jake was carried through the market like a trophy, past shocked onlookers who quickly stepped aside. He saw some humans in the crowd, but they turned their heads, pretending not to notice. Nobody helped. Nobody stopped the aliens. It was as if they all knew something he didn't, and that scared him more than anything. The alien women brought him to a large, dark ship parked behind a row of metal tents. The ramp lowered with a hiss, and Jake was taken inside without resistance. The inside of the ship was warm and glowing with blue lights and strange symbols on the walls. He was placed in a soft, round seat, but guards stood around him, blocking every exit. "Why are you doing this?" Jake asked, trying to stay calm. His heart pounded. Sweat ran down his neck, but he kept his voice firm. Still, they gave no answers, only studied him, some with interest, others with curiosity. Then, one alien stepped forward and touched a device on her wrist. A mechanical voice echoed, translating her words. "You are safe, human male," she said slowly. "You are needed." Jake frowned. Needed for what? The alien woman didn't reply directly, only said, "You are not harmed, you are special." That didn't help. He was in an alien ship surrounded by tall, strong women who acted like he was their property. The ship started to move, lifting, off the ground with a low hum. Outside the windows, the market disappeared into the clouds and stars slowly filled the sky. Jake tried to think fast. Should he fight? Should he scream? Should he wait? They didn't treat him roughly, but they were not friendly either. He noticed that everyone on board was female, and they all watched him like he was important. One younger alien woman with glowing green eyes kept glancing at him with something close to hope. Suddenly, she walked over and sat on her knees before him. "I learn your tongue," she said with effort. "You belong with us now." Jake's breath caught. "What do you mean, belong?" She touched his hand gently. "We choose. We protect. You give future." His heart dropped. Was this about reproduction? A breeding program? His skin turned cold, his stomach twisted. No, you've got the wrong guy," he said, voice rising. "I'm not part of this." But the young alien only tilted her head, her glowing eyes soft. "You are strong. You are the one." The Queen said so. Jake stared at her in disbelief. Outside the window, the stars burned brighter. The ship was far from the market now, and Earth was millions of miles away. And Jake realized something chilling. He hadn't just been taken. He had been chosen. The ship landed with a soft thud on a world Jake had never seen before. The sky outside was violet, with twin moons glowing above dark mountains. Strange birds with crystal wings flew past as the ramp opened, but Jake's eyes were on the group waiting for him outside. At the center stood the tallest alien woman he'd ever seen. Her armor shone gold, and a long cape flowed behind her like mist. Her face was calm but powerful, her eyes glowing like firelight. She didn't move like a soldier. She moved like a queen. The guards pushed Jake gently forward, but he stood frozen. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice dry and low. The young alien girl with green eyes whispered, "You are going before the mother, the queen of our people." Jake blinked, trying to understand, but the strange planet, the ceremony, and the pressure made his head spin. He was led through giant doors into a glowing hall filled with vines, crystals, and strange blue mist. Everything felt alive, breathing with ancient energy. At the end of the hall stood a throne made of bones and gold, and sitting on it, the Queen. Her eyes locked onto Jake like a hunter eyeing prey. "Bring him forward," she said in perfect English, her voice smooth but commanding. Jake stepped slowly, unsure if he was walking toward death or something even stranger. The Queen rose and walked to him, tall and graceful. She stood close, too close, and reached out to touch his face. "You are smaller than I imagined," she whispered. "But the strength within you is clear." Jake stepped back. "What do you want from me?" The Queen gave a small smile. "We want a future." Then she turned, walking slowly around him, explaining, "Our people are warriors, builders, thinkers. But we were created without males. We clone, we replicate. But each new generation is weaker than the last. We watched your species from afar and we saw strength, passion, and balance." Jake felt cold. "So you kidnap people to fix your problems?" The Queen stopped walking and looked him dead in the eyes. "No," she said softly. "We select. You were chosen because your record showed empathy, courage, loyalty. You did not just survive Earth, you helped others do it too." Jake clenched his fists. "That doesn't mean I agreed to this." The Queen nodded slowly. "No, you didn't. But neither did our kind ask to die out. Your DNA may be the key to saving us. You are not a prisoner. You are a savior." He didn't believe her, not yet. The words were calm, but the silence behind them felt heavy. Jake looked. Around the room, all female faces, watching him like he was their only chance. That pressure crushed him harder than chains ever could. Then the Queen lifted her hand and pointed to a floating orb near the throne. It glowed and showed images, other humans tested and scanned, some healthy, some weak, some already gone. Jake felt sick. What happened to them? Most failed the trials, the Queen said simply. But you passed before even arriving. Jake was shaking now, but not from fear, something deeper. They had watched him, studied him, picked him like an object. "You think I'll just accept this?" he asked quietly. The Queen stepped close again and placed something in his hand, a small stone with glowing lines. "When you are ready," she said, "squeeze this, and we will begin the bonding. But until then, you may explore, learn, speak, feel. You are not a tool, Jake Miller. You are a turning point." With that, she turned and left the room, her guards following. Jake stood there, confused, angry, and lost. The young alien girl, Lyra, stepped forward and whispered, "You don't have to fear me. I'll help you, understand?" He didn't answer, just stared at the glowing stone in his hand. A choice was being placed before him, one he never asked for, and far beyond Earth, on a strange world filled with beauty and danger. Jake felt the weight of a whole species resting silently on his shoulders. Jake woke up on a soft bed made of glowing fabric. It felt too quiet, too peaceful for a place that had stolen him from everything he knew. He sat up slowly, expecting guards, but the room was open, wide and strange. Curved walls shimmered like light through water, and the air smelled like sweet rain. The door slid open without a sound, and Lyra entered holding a tray with glowing fruit. "You must eat," she said kindly. "Today is the test." Jake frowned. "Test for what?" She looked away, nervous. "To see if you and our kind are truly compatible." Jake stood, heart pounding. "You're still planning to use me?" Lyra shook her head. "No force, I swear." She placed the tray down and added, "But the Queen must know. Your body, your energy, your core." He didn't like the sound of that at all. Soon, 2 guards came to guide him. No chains, but their presence was heavy. They led him through a glowing hallway into a chamber that felt alive. Pulsing lights moved like heartbeats along the walls, and strange machines hummed softly. A group of alien scientists stood waiting, tall, calm, and silent. In the center of the room was a floating table surrounded by blue energy. Jake hesitated. Is this gonna hurt? One of the scientists, older with silver marks on her skin, replied through a translator. No pain, only scan, only truth. Lyra stayed by his side, whispering softly, I will stay with you. If you want. Jake nodded, unsure why her presence made him feel less trapped. As he lay on the table, the blue lights passed over his skin, warming, touching, reading. Strange images floated in the air. His muscles, his nerves, his DNA. Suddenly, a soft tone sounded and the air thickened. One of the scientists gasped quietly, looking at a glowing panel. The Queen entered silently, watching with narrowed eyes. He is strong, the lead scientist said. More than expected. Jake sat up. What does that mean? The Queen stepped forward. Your body resists weakness. Your cells adapt fast. Your mind remains clear even under stress. You are not just compatible, you are exceptional. Jake shook his head. I'm not a lab rat. The Queen didn't smile, but her voice softened. You are not being tested for pain. You are being measured for hope. Our people need someone who can survive the merge and lead it. He didn't know what merge meant, but it sounded serious. Just then, his vision blurred and his knees buckled. Lyra caught him before he fell, shouting something in her language. The lights in the room turned red. Alarms. Flashing softly, Jake's chest ached, heat rising through his bones. He felt like his blood was moving too fast, like his body was changing. The scientists rushed in with glowing needles and pressed them to his neck. The pain stopped, and everything went still. Jake lay gasping, Lyra holding his hand. What was that? He whispered. You passed the limit, Lyra said, her voice shaking. Most don't. She looked up at the Queen, anger in her eyes. You pushed him too hard. But the Queen only watched, then said quietly, he survived. Jake sat up slowly, weak but alive. He looked at the Queen, then at the scientists, and finally at Lyra. Something inside him changed. Not just fear now, but a strange fire. I'm not your tool, he said, voice rough. I'm not here to be broken. The Queen nodded once. Then don't break. Rise instead. Jake stood, every part of him tired but still burning. If they wanted a survivor, they had one, but he would survive on his terms, not theirs. And now, he needed answers, real answers. The test was over, but something far bigger had just begun, not just inside the lab, but inside Jake himself. The palace halls were quiet that night. Jake sat alone in the high chamber they gave him, walls glowing, faint blue, wind whispering through the open crystal windows. His body still ached from the test, but his mind was restless, filled with questions. Why him? What did they really want? And why did Lyra look at him with guilt in her eyes? He couldn't sleep, not with the weight of an entire alien species pressing against his thoughts. So he sat by the edge of the room, staring at the twin moons above. That's when he heard it, a soft knock on the wall panel, barely a sound. He turned, and there she was, Lyra, wrapped in a dark cloak, eyes glowing in the dim light. You should not be here, Jake said softly. She stepped inside, her voice, I had to see you. I have something to show. She held out a small cube, no bigger than her palm, glowing with soft green lines. It holds the truth, she whispered. What the Queen won't say. Jake narrowed his eyes. Why are you doing this? Lyra looked at him for a long time, then answered, because I don't want to lose you. That caught him off guard. Before he could reply, she touched the cube and placed it on the table. A projection burst to life. Holograms of other humans appeared. Faces confused, some sick, some screaming. Jake felt sick. These are the others? Lyra nodded. They were taken before you. Tested. Most failed. One video showed a man collapsing, his body glowing and then fading away. Jake looked away, pain twisting his gut. Lyra reached out, gently touching his arm. They didn't know what they were doing at first. But now, they believe you're the final chance. Jake pulled his arm back, his voice sharp. And you? You were part of this too? Lyra stepped back, tears shining in her eyes. I was born from the Queen. I was made for this mission, she said quietly. I learned your language, your stories, your kindness, all to connect with the one they chose. Jake's heart beat faster. So you've been trained to be close to me? Since birth? She nodded, shame in her expression. I thought it was duty, she whispered. But now, I don't know. Jake stood up, pacing the room, his fists clenched. So this was all fake? Everything between us? Lyra looked up, her voice trembling. Not fake to me. You were supposed to be a target, a subject, but you became something else. I started caring, she said softly. More than they wanted. Jake stared at her, trying to see if she was lying, but her eyes only held sadness and something deeper. Suddenly, a sharp sound came from the wall. An alert, a soft chime. Lyra turned pale. They know I'm here. She grabbed the cube, shutting it down, and moved toward the wall panel. You have to decide, Jake, she said quickly. Play their game. Or rewrite the rules. Before he could ask more, she vanished into the shadows, the door ceiling behind her. Jake stood alone again. But everything was different now. Lyra's secret changed the game. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about control, lies, and a quiet war behind the Queen's calm voice. He sat down again, holding the cube tight in his hand. She could have left him in the dark, but she didn't. She risked everything to tell the truth. That meant something. The Queen had plans, but so did he now. And maybe, just maybe, Lyra wasn't just another piece of their puzzle. Maybe she was his first real ally in a world full of masks. The stars outside blinked in silence, but Jake's mind was awake. The next move would be his, and he would make sure it changed everything. Jake couldn't sleep. Lyra's words kept echoing in his mind. Play their game, or rewrite the rules. He didn't want to be anyone's experiment, anyone's future, so he decided one thing, and only one. He had to escape. The palace. Halls were quieter than usual. Guards had changed positions and strange alerts blinked across wall panels. Maybe they were watching him more closely now. Maybe they knew something had passed between him and Lyra. He waited until the next night. When the moons were low and the halls were dark, he used a spoon he had sharpened from his food tray to unlock the vent cover above his chamber. It took time. Sweat dripped from his brow and his hands shook. But he did it. He climbed into the narrow duct, crawling through metal and steam. The air was hot and his arms burned from the sharp edges. But after a long crawl, he reached a metal grate above the lower level, the hangar bay. He could see strange ships parked below, glowing blue and gold. There were fewer guards than he expected, maybe because they never thought he'd try this. He dropped silently to the floor, rolling behind a cargo crate. His heart pounded as he looked around, planning his path. The map Lyra had slipped into his food dish earlier guided him, hand-drawn and real. She had helped him, even knowing it could get her exiled. Or worse, moving quickly between shadows. Jake found a small scout ship. It was unguarded, glowing softly, with a door that opened at his touch. Inside, the controls were unfamiliar, but he could guess the basics. He sat down, took a deep breath, and powered the systems. A sudden voice behind him made him freeze. You cannot go. He turned sharply. Lyra stood in the doorway, her cloak wrapped tight, her eyes wide. You'll be hunted, she whispered. They will see it as betrayal. Jake stood, frustrated. Then help me, come with me. Lyra stepped back, pain in her eyes. I cannot. My blood ties me. Here. He stared at her. So you'll just let them keep using me? She shook her head. No, I came to give you this. She handed him a metal band with a glowing stone in the center. It hides your signal, she said. At least for a while. Jake took it, their hands brushing. Why are you doing this? He asked softly. Lyra looked at him, her voice trembling. Because you're the first person who ever looked at me like I was more than a mission. You see me, not just my title." Jake's jaw tightened, torn between fear and something warmer. "I'll come back for you," he said suddenly, surprising himself. "Once I figure out how to stop all this." Lyra gave a small nod, a tear running down her cheek. "Then run, Jake, before the Queen finds out." He stepped into the ship, closing the door behind him. The engines hummed, rising to life. As the hangar door slowly opened, he launched into the sky, stars flashing across the glass dome above. But the moment he cleared the atmosphere, alarms screamed from the control panel. A ship was following, fast and armed. He cursed under his breath, pushing buttons, trying to move faster. Laser beams shot past him, one grazing the wing. He dodged, twisted the ship, dove into an asteroid field nearby. Rocks slammed into the hull, shaking everything. But he kept flying, refusing to stop, refusing to be caught. After what felt like hours, he reached a dark region of space. No signals, no stars. The chasing ship was gone or had lost his trail. Jake sat back, breathing hard, sweat dripping from his face. He was free. For now. He looked at the small, glowing band on his wrist. Lyra's gift, her warning, her quiet act of rebellion. He wasn't just running anymore, he was thinking, planning, and changing. He whispered to himself, "I'll end this. Not for me. For her." The stars around him didn't answer, but his heart had found something stronger than fear. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone anymore. Jake woke to the sound of silence. His small ship floated in deep space, alone, hidden, and dark. He had powered it down after escaping, afraid the Queen's army would track him again. But even in this quiet, there was no peace inside his heart. He stared out the window at a dead star, thinking of Lyra's face, her fear, her warning, her silent tear when she helped him escape. She had risked everything and he had promised to return. Now he just didn't know how. Suddenly, a soft beep echoed through the cabin. Jake sat up fast. A signal, faint and coded. It was a private message, marked in a language he barely knew. But one word blinked in English. Choice. He touched the screen, and Lyra's image flickered to life. "This is not a trap," her voice said, calm but urgent. "But time is short. The Queen has called the trial of choice. For you." Jake narrowed his eyes, confused. The message continued. "If you return now, she offers one final test. One where you decide. You can walk away forever, or join us, but on your terms." He didn't know if it was real or bait. But one thing was clear. The Queen wasn't done with him yet. Jake stared at the stars, then powered the ship. He turned the controls and set a course back to the world he swore to flee. This time, he wasn't going as prey. He was going. As a man with a choice, the palace doors opened wide as he returned. Guards stood in silence, no weapons, no anger, just stillness. He walked through the glowing halls to the chamber where it all began. This time, no chains held him, no guards touched him. The Queen waited on her throne, cloaked in silver and shadow. Lyra stood at her side, eyes wide with surprise and hope. Jake stepped forward and stopped at the center of the room. "I'm here," he said calmly. "Now tell me why." The Queen rose, her voice like thunder and ice. "You were never our prisoner," she said, "but now you are our test. Our people face extinction," she continued. "We need more than strength. We need consent. You are the first to survive, the first to see truth." Jake folded his arms. "And now you want me to accept this? To save your people?" The Queen nodded slowly. "But only if you choose to." The chamber shifted, walls glowing as a circle formed around him. Voices of the council echoed from above, watching, judging, waiting. "This is the trial of choice," the Queen declared. "You may walk away and forget us, or you may accept the bond and begin something new, with freedom." Jake looked at Lyra, her face pale but proud, then at the Queen, her power barely hiding her desperation. He thought of Earth, cold, lonely, filled with noise but little meaning. He thought of Lyra, her warmth, her quiet strength, her heart. Jake stepped forward into the light, then paused. "I will not be your tool," he said clearly. "I will not be forced, pushed, or worshipped." The room held its breath. "But I will help if I am free to love, to lead, to refuse." The Queen's expression changed, a slow nod of respect forming. "Then we begin not with control," she said, "but with understanding." Lyra stepped forward, placing a simple necklace in his hand. "It is not a collar," she whispered. "It is a sign of trust and choice." Jake placed it around his neck, feeling its weight, then looked into her eyes. "Then let's do this our way." The chamber filled with light, not magic, not power, hope, and for the first time Jake felt like he wasn't just surviving, he was choosing who to be. Weeks passed since the trial of choice. The palace no longer felt like a cage to Jake. The walls still glowed and the guards still watched. But something was different now. This time, he walked the halls as a guest, not a prisoner, not an experiment, but a man with power. The Queen kept her word. No more tests, no more commands. Instead, she invited Jake to join her council, not as a tool, but as a voice. He listened, questioned, and slowly began to understand their world. Their species was dying not just from science, but from silence. They had lost emotion, connection, laughter. Everything had become structure, protocol, and survival. But Jake brought something they hadn't seen in generations. Heart. Lyra walked beside him each day. She no longer wore her cloak of duty, no longer hid behind titles. She smiled more now, laughed at his strange Earth stories, even teased him about his HFY cooking. He taught her how to dance in the gardens under the twin moons, and she taught him how to feel safe again. One morning, a message arrived. From Earth, a distant outpost had picked up his ship's old signal, and they were asking questions. Jake stood at the window watching the skies. He could return, go home, explain everything, or stay. That same day, the Queen invited him to a chamber filled with young aliens, students, thinkers, and builders. "We want them to learn from you," she said softly. "Not just science, but spirit." Jake looked around at the curious faces and nodded. "Then let's begin with stories," he said. "Real ones, with truth and mistakes and choice." Over time, something new was born. An alliance not just of blood or duty, but of trust. Jake didn't teach them how to be human. He showed them how to be more alive, and in return, they gave him something he never thought he'd find in deep space: purpose. A new council was formed. Part human, part alien. Ships were rebuilt, not for war, but for peace and connection. Lyra stood at the front of it all, her voice strong, her steps confident. She was no longer just the Queen's daughter. She was a leader of her own making, and Jake? He was the strange visitor who had once been lifted like a toy. Now he stood tall as the chosen bridge between two species, not because of strength, but because he dared to care. One quiet evening, Jake and Lyra sat by the garden's edge. The moons above reflected in the still water. She turned to him and asked, "Do you regret it? Staying?" He smiled gently. "I don't think I ever belonged to one world." She leaned against his shoulder. "We've changed everything," she whispered. He nodded. "And we're just getting started." Somewhere in the stars, a new alliance was growing, not with fear, not with force, but with small moments of trust. And Jake, the human who had been stolen, lifted, and tested, had become the one thing he never imagined, a hope for the future. Because in the end, it wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing, and he chose them.